A warm welcome to you all this evening. Before we begin the meeting, there are a few housekeeping items I need to cover. Firstly, I need to advise you all that this is a public meeting which will be live streamed for public viewing and a record of the decision published the day following the meeting. The press and public are welcome to attend, however, may be asked to leave if there is a requirement to consider exempt information. Exempt information will be considered in a closed session and will not be streamed online. I would also like to remind all committee members that you are required to attend in person. For any councillors who are accessing this meeting remotely, I must remind you that you are not counted as being present for the purposes of the Local Government Act of 1972, and you may not vote on any item under consideration. You may, however, at my discretion as chair, contribute to the discussion and participate in a non-decision-making capacity. This evening's main agenda starts with consideration of investment strategy review implementation plan. We will then receive an update on the Threadneedle Carbon Neutral Real Estate Trust. Before moving on to consider the draft accounts, following this, we will review the quarterly report and high-level monitoring report and conclude with the stewardship code timeline. Before we begin the main item agenda, can we please cover the administrative items starting with the appointment of the chair and vice chair? Agenda item 1, appointment of chair and vice chair of the Pension Committee for the municipal year 2023-24. Please could I ask the members to confirm myself, Councillor Cam Adams as the chair and Councillor Robert Chapman as vice chair of the Pension Committee for the municipal year 2023-24. Members, can you confirm that? Okay. Great, thank you. Now, before we move on, Ian is not here, Ian Williams. This is his last Pension Committee meeting before he leaves. So I would like to add my thanks to Ian Williams, as this is likely to be his final Pension Committee at ACME. Ian has attended this committee as Group Director of Finance and Resources for almost 15 years and has been a steadfast supporter of the pension fund and its work. I would like to put my thanks on record for his hard work and dedication over the year. Please join me to thank Ian for his good job. Thanks. Thank you. Is that noted? Thank you. Agenda item 2, term of reference of the Pension Committee for the municipal year 2023-24, page 7 to 8. So I move this item. Please could I ask the committee to know the times of reference for the Pensions Committee for municipal year 2023-24. Thank you. Agenda item 3, apologies for absence. Apology for absence have been received from Councillor Radbone, Ozan and Gordon. Apology for lateness have been received from Councillor Gordon. Those attending online are Councillor Ozan, Gordon, and Jonathan. Agenda item 4, declaration of interest. Members may declare pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest in any item coming before the Pensions Committee. They must state the item for which they are declaring an interest and what the interest is, as this must be properly minuted. Where the declaration is for disclosable pecuniary interest, the member must leave the room when the item in which the member has an interest is being discussed, unless the member has obtained dispensation from the monitoring officer or standard committee to remain in the room and participate in the meeting. Where a member has a non-pecuniary interest, he or she must declare the existence and nature of the interest in relation to the relevant agenda item. As soon as it becomes apparent to him or her, He or she may remain in the room, participate in any discussion or vote, provided that contractual, financial, consent, permission, or licensing matter are not under consideration relating to the item in which the member has an interest. If this is so, the member must leave the room unless the members has obtained a dispensation from the monitoring officer or standard committee. So do members have any interest they wish to declare? My wife is a member of AGPS. I've declared that before, so I declare that. Yes, declaration of interest. Any members want to do? No? Okay. Agenda item 5, consideration of minutes of the previous meeting. Are there any matter arising from the minutes? No? Yes? No? No? Okay. A member agreed the minute on the 30th March 2023 and 27th April 2023 as a true and accurate record of the proceedings. Agreed? Councillor Troughton, yes, agreed? Okay. So agenda item 7, exclusion of press and public proposed resolution. We will bring forward agenda item 7 to consider exempt item 6, investment strategy implementation. A member agreed that the press and public be excluded from the proceedings of the Pensions Committee meeting during consideration of exempt report appendices at item 6, 8, 10, and 14 on the agenda, on the ground that it is likely, in the view of the nature of business to be transacted, that were members of the public to be present, there will be disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. So agenda item 6, investment strategy implementation, exempt. Can we exempt the public, please?
Thank you. So as the Chair said, this report introduces the draft statement of accounts for the pension fund for the year ending 31st of March 2023. So this obviously is an agenda item that we bring every year around this time of year, and it's an opportunity for you to view the draft accounts ahead of the audit of the accounts, and before publication of the pension fund report and accounts, which will be later this year. What we'd like to draw your attention to in the report is the recent change back to the 31st of May deadline for production of the accounts. So together with the council itself, the pension fund was able to publish on time. So this is the first time that the 31st of May deadline has applied since, I think, 2019. So we have been able to return to this relatively tight deadline after 3 years off, and that's something. It's something that as a team we're proud to have been able to achieve. I think looking at overall London boroughs, I think there are only 8 London boroughs who were able to publish their draft accounts on time, and Hackney was one of them for both the council and the pension fund. In terms of the audit timetable, audit hasn't yet commenced, and at this stage we haven't received a timetable. In terms of publication of the annual report, that will be brought to you in draft format at either the September or the November Pensions Committee, at which point we will request approval to publish. It is quite likely that the report will still need to be in draft form when published, as we don't necessarily anticipate completion of the audit in time to publish a finalised version. What we do need to highlight is that the 2021 and 21-22 annual reports are also still in draft status, and that's due to the ongoing backlog that exists across local government audit, which has happened in relation to an issue over infrastructure assets. It's nothing to do with the pension fund accounts themselves. We have seen a final completion report for 2021, and the auditor notes that they haven't as yet identified any issues which would result in them issuing a modified audit opinion. So we are hopeful that 2021 will be signed off in due course, and should be without issue for the pension fund. In terms of the 21-22 audit, that has been significantly delayed, although our understanding from the auditors is that there should be no further queries on the pension fund accounts, although we don't yet have an audit completion report for that year. So there's a copy of the draft statement is obviously attached as an appendix, and I'm happy to take any questions on either the accounts themselves or the delays to the audit and approval process.
Any questions or comments from members? No. So the recommendation is for members to know this report. Can you please know the report? Noted. Thank you. We move on to the next agenda item 10, quarterly update report, part exempt, page 73. The next 2 agenda items are the new version of the fund's quarterly report, which we are trying for the first time at the committee. The quarterly report also includes a recommendation around 2 of the fund's service contracts for actuarial and benefits and governance services. Report and Appendix 2 are contained with supplementary paper. Appendix 1, 3 to 5 are contained with the main agenda pack. Please, could I ask Rachel to introduce the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the next two items, the quarterly update report and the high-level monitoring report, represent the new format for the fund's quarterly reporting. So this is the first committee that we've trialled this format for the report. It does look quite different to the previous version. So what we're trying to do with the two reports is, with the quarterly report, is to provide a narrative update on each of the key areas across the fund, and then with the high level report, we're looking to provide a high level overview, using sort of RAG scoring charts, and sort of essentially a sort of more visual approach to setting out where the fund is in terms of meeting its overall strategic objectives. You know, I know, Chair, that it's something that you have you've helped work with Aon on, and Jackie as well. And I think Catherine and Karen wanted to take you through to make sure that everyone's happy with the new format of the report.
Sorry, if I may just say that we only got 15 minutes for this report. 15 minutes.
So I've on the schedule, I've allowed 15 minutes for each of the two reports. So we can have up to half an hour to go through both, as it may be that one report needs more time than the other.
So I'm going to introduce the quarterly report. So just to be clear, for anyone who's the main report itself is in the supplementary papers pack, and then some of the appendices are in the main pack between pages 73 and 124. But one of the appendices is in the supplementary pack as well. So hopefully you can follow where everything's going. So as Rachel said, the aim of the quarterly update is to give you some background in things that are going on nationally and things that are going on with the fund. So just going to draw your attention to a couple of specific things in the report. One thing we should say is that there is a recommendation which is to approve extensions to contracts. We should obviously note that one of those contracts is ours. So I would direct any questions about that to Rachel rather than us. There is, so just picking up with the governance update, so there is a cyber update which is an exempt appendix. I'm not going to pick up anything specific on that unless there is any questions. If there's any questions on the funding and investments update as well, I will defer those to Rachel, and again with the appendices that relate to those. There is a couple of specific things in the administration and communications update that I just want to particularly draw the committee's attention to. So the first of those is just starting at the very bottom of page 15, and then moving on in the supplementary pack, and this is about McCloud. So there is quite a detailed update about the McCloud programme in the quarterly update, but we just wanted to give a bit of a further verbal update, because at the point that the report was written, we and the fund officers were still liaising with Equiniti about exactly what their plans are. We do want to make sure the committee understands that there is a relatively significant risk attached to the McCloud programme. The regulations are due to be in place to come into force on the 1st of October 2023, which effectively means that from that date, the fund should be administering benefits in line with the McLeod remedy, which is to allow an underpin for all members, not just the previously protected members. This does require updates to software. Equinity's plan originally was to do that as part of an overall upgrade to the software system to Compendia Touch. That is still planned, but the implementation of Compendia Touch is not going to have been put in place by the 1st of October. So Equinity are coming up with an alternative plan for how they are going to administer benefits from the 1st of October when the regulations require that they do so. But there is a risk that obviously with the delay to the implementation of Compendia Touch, there could potentially be a period where there is some uncertainty about administering benefits, and it's possible that there could be a period where benefits are calculated and then having to be subsequently revisited. So we just wanted to make the committee aware of that situation and the risk, and we will be making sure that that is reflected on the risk register. The risk register is coming up in the next report, which Karen will be talking about shortly. Are there any questions about that aspect before I move on?
Yeah, my question on that is that I read that there's a further consultation on the McLeod or something like. Why are they having a further consultation? Oh, there was a consultation we had before.
So there have been a couple of consultations in relation to McLeod. Some consultations are across the whole public sector, some are LGPS specific, because this is something that affects all public sector schemes. There have been some delays nationally simply because of the liaison between the different public sector schemes to make sure everyone is following the same broad policy. There is a consultation out at the moment on the LGPS regulations. Unfortunately, this consultation is later than initially everyone was hoping it would be, which does mean that the regulations are not actually going to be in place until September. So this is also leading to some delays with the software development because the software developers cannot fully put in place what's needed until the regulations are finalised and in place.
Jonathan?
Thank you, Chair. I'm concerned about members. I'm the scheme member representative. Is McLeod going to impact members and their benefits, or is it another area? Thank you.
So some members will be affected by McLeod. We are expecting that because of the way the McLeod remedy is working in the LGPS, we are actually expecting the number of members to be affected by McLeod to actually be very low. Because the way it's working is they sort of get an underpin check to check whether previous scheme benefits would have been better than new scheme benefits. And experience of the existing underpin, very, very few members have had it kick in. So we don't actually expect very many members to be affected, but the checks should be happening to make sure that members are getting what they're entitled to. So at some point, members will need to have that check, whether that's at the point they are retiring or being deferred, or whether that will be a rectification process. But members will get what they're entitled to. It's just that there could potentially be a delay due to the delay in the regulations and the software.
Jonathan again.
Thank you very much for the clarification. What I would urge is that the communication with our underlying beneficiaries, our members, our scheme members, is really addressing this issue. It's good to know what might be going on. Thank you.
What I would say is that you said, correct me if I'm wrong, you said that there will be a bit of delay when this comes to into force. So how long are we talking about here, the delay?
Yeah, I should probably clarify. So Equinity are coming up with a plan to make sure that as far as they can, they are delivering the McLeod solution from the 1st of October. So there's two elements. There's making sure that ongoing administration is delivering the McLeod remedy. There's also a process going back over the last 10 years, looking at members who've already retired. So the work looking back at the previous members is already ongoing. It's really the ongoing administration aspect that is the concern. So Equinity are coming up with a plan. We were hoping to have a bit more of an update on that to share with the committee tonight, but that is still being worked on. So there will be a further update to the committee on that.
Okay. Rachel, do you have? All right. Carry on then. Thank you.
The only other thing really that I wanted to specifically pick up was on page 20, there's an article there about pension dashboards. So I just wanted to flag that since this report was published, just in the last couple of days, there has actually been a further update about the pensions dashboards programme. So as it says in that article there, there was a delay to the pensions dashboards programme at a national level. We've now had a further update that the final connection deadline for all schemes is now going to be the 31st of October 2026. But it is quite likely that public sector schemes will have an earlier deadline than that. So that's really just to make the committee aware that since this report was written, that has been a more recent development. I don't know if there's any other questions about anything else in the quarterly update, including any of the appendices.
Any questions or comments? I've got something to clarify from my side. The annual benefit statements, are we still on track to meet the 31st of August deadline?
So at present we are. Obviously we are mindful that there are a large number of other, there are a large number of other issues running in administration at the moment, not least the need for Equinity to plan around the McLeod programme. So we are mindful that there is likely to be pressure on Equinity in terms of resourcing, but at the moment there's nothing to indicate that we will not be able to produce annual benefit statements by the deadline. And we will of course keep the committee updated. Mindful that the next committee is in September. So if there are any urgent updates prior to that, obviously it's something that we will share with you as the chair and with the wider committee to let you know.
Any questions or comments from members? Otherwise, we are the recommendations. You want to say something?
I'm sorry, I thought we were just on that aspect of the report.
Oh, is it finished? Are you done? Sorry.
There we go. Thank you, Chair. So I think unless are there any further questions around the quarterly update report itself? Are there any further questions around the quarterly report?
Does it show the valuation anywhere?
So it does. It does provide a valuation update, which I'm just about to tell you which section that is. It's section 7 is the funding update. Yes. And obviously that has been very heavily influenced by wider economic changes. So So the most recent date we have to report to you is an update as at the 31st of March 2023. At which point the estimated funding level was 126%. How much? Being honest, I've only put the surplus in here, which was 390 million. 390 million.
We have a figure in the annual report, so I presume it's.
It is, yes. So it's in the region of, and this is off the top of my head, 1875.
So that the increase in the funding level is very welcome. Congratulations.
Yes, we probably do have to clarify that the increase in funding level is largely as a result of movement in gilt yields. In terms of questions on this report, as Catherine pointed out, there is a recommendation around extensions to the actuarial service contract and to the benefits and governance services contracts. So at present, these are due to expire on the 31st of July. We are requesting that the committee grant a short extension until the 31st of December, to allow us to carry out a procurement process over the summer.
Any questions or comment? No. So I echo Mr. Chapman's congratulations to you, to everybody, with the improvement in the evaluation. But having said that, recommendations, the members are to know the report and to approve the extension to the fund's actuary service contract and benefits and governance services contracted on the 31st of December 2023. The members approve it?
Great.
Great, thank you. So now we move on to agenda item 11, high-level monitoring report. Was it part of what we just finished, or just for you, Karen? All right. This report follows on from the previous agenda item. The report is contained within the supplementary paper. Appendix 1 to 4 are contained within the main agenda pack. Please, could I call Karen? No, Richard this time. Karen to produce a report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Before I go on to present item 11, can I just put a point for the record? Chair, you may have noticed I left during item 8, and I was trying to ask a question, but I was recognised that I was in a queue of questions. It's just that I had a conflict in relation to that item in relation to another fund that I advise. I can't say the details because we are in public now, and that was an exempt item, but I'm happy to share the details of that conflict afterwards. Okay. Thank you. So in relation to item 11, as Rachel mentioned earlier, we have redesigned how the information is being provided, and as part of the review of the information that the committee received, it was felt that there was actually some areas that the committee should be having a high level oversight of, that they weren't receiving information on. So the purpose of this report is to try and give the committee, in the covering report, a sort of high level snapshot across all of the fund's key areas. So it's basically, are you achieving your objectives within your policies and strategies? What's the risk of not achieving those objectives? And also, are you actually achieving what you set out to say you were going to achieve in your business plan that was agreed in March? And finally, do you have any breaches of the law that the committee need to be aware of? So the covering report is in the supplementary pack on page 35. And the covering report basically goes through each of these areas and tries to provide a visual, a high-level summary of each of these areas. And the appendices, which are actually in the main pack, starting at page 125, provide more detail should any of the committee members want to look at any of the areas that are being highlighted in the covering report. So just to very quickly take you through what's in here. So on page 38 of the supplementary pack, the graphs that you see here are providing an overview of your business plan and whether or not you're on target to achieve all the tasks that you agreed within your business plan. And this is an area that you haven't really received in this way in the past. All that the graphs on page 38 are doing are actually summarising the table that starts on page 125, and every single item in your business plan now has an update to show whether or not it's in progress, whether it's behind schedule, whether it's actually been completed. And as at this quarter, or it was as at the 31st of May, there was only one area that was really not yet started, and that related to a funding and investment area that had been delayed because of the other priorities within funding and investment. So if you were wanting to look at any of the detail in relation to the progress of your business plan, you'd be able to look at the appendix and see the comments in the appendix there. So that's in relation to the business plan. I am going through this quite quickly because I am conscious of time. On page 39 of the covering report, again in the supplementary pack, we talk about your strategic objectives scorecard. So within each of the fund's policies and strategies, there are a number of objectives, and clearly you as the committee have agreed those policies and strategies, so you want to make sure that you are actually achieving them. So what we've done is actually determined how do we measure whether or not you are achieving these objectives, and this scorecard is to provide you with that information. It is quite a bit of work to get it all set up. So at this point in time, we've started with administration and communications as the two key areas. Hopefully at the next committee, we'll be able to pull in governance and potentially funding and investment as well. But in relation to administration and communications on the supplementary pack on page 40, there's two graphs shown. Now really the graphs show very similar information. The top graph has the red, amber and green of the various measures within administration and communications, and the graph in the middle of the page is just effectively a heat map to show generally are you in a good position or not such a good position. Now you might be looking at the fact, and particularly in the communications, that we've got an awful lot of red coming through here. So probably the main reason for that is at this point in time, a lot of your objectives around areas such as member satisfaction and employer satisfaction, and are members understanding information that's been provided to them? Are they getting a good service? And a lot of this is obviously relating to the service that Equiniti provides with them. At this point in time, there are no surveys that are collecting this information. So that is the key reason for the majority of your reds there. It's not that we think they're providing a bad service, but there is no evidence that actually confirms one way or the other. Some of the other reds and ambers are because Equiniti have been a bit behind on their service level agreements, their key performance indicators as well. And another of the reds was because you do actually have quite a high proportion of internal dispute resolution procedures that have been going on recently. So it does provide you with perhaps a bit of an overview of the fund in a completely different way, but it does allow you, if you are interested in areas, to basically go into a bit more detail by looking at the information in the appendices, and also the covering report does provide some narrative. The next area is the breaches of the law, which is referred to on page 41. I've just realised I've skipped risk, but I will come back to risk. Breaches of the law. So clearly, as well as having your own policies and strategies, you do want to make sure that you are following your legal requirements. And therefore, it's important that we actually check to see whether you are actually doing so as much as we can. The majority of areas where we commonly see breaches of the law are things such as not sending out notifications to scheme members, maybe if someone retires from the fund, not sending it out within the legal timescale. And that is relatively common, that you will have some breaches of the law in relation to areas such as that. Unfortunately, Equinity are currently not tracking those, but they are hoping to get information for us in the future. So there's none of those in the schedule. However, there is one breach of the law that's been highlighted, and that relates to the pension board. Currently, the pension board, they haven't actually had a meeting for a number of months because the scheme membership has changed quite drastically. Pretty much everyone left. However, Rachel and Jackie have now been able to ensure that appointments have been made to the 2 employer representative roles. The 2 scheme member representative roles, the appointments are happening as we speak. They're going through a process as we speak. However, due to the fact that the board hasn't met for a while, Rachel intends to actually do a report to the pensions regulator, which I believe is imminently going. She's nodding her
It
head.
is, thank you.
Yeah. So that hopefully by the time you get the next breach report, that breach should have changed to green, because hopefully the board should have met. And Catherine is going to be the interim chair until a more permanent chair can be determined for the board. I'm just going back to the risk register, which is referred to on page 40, thank you. So page 40, the covering report highlights the risks that are furthest from target. So basically they're either amber, furthest from amber or green. And the bullet points there explain what those risks are. And then you've got the detailed risk registers. One is the appendices, and there's a dashboard in the risk register you'll see that explains how the risk has moved since the last time you've seen that. So the risk register hasn't been brought as regularly in the past as we would like. So nowadays it's hoped that we'll be taking it to every committee so you can see what the key risks are, and you can obviously ask any questions about any of those key risks. Okay, that's all I was going to say, but more than happy to take questions on any of these items, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Any questions from members? Councillor Chapman?
Just raising issues about poor delivery of the administration contract. I remember we had a long discussion about this at the time the reappointment was made, and we did discuss a sort of longer term solution whereby, I mean, look at joining in a shared service or some other alternative approach. And just conscious that there will be quite a long run into doing anything like that. Is there an update on where we might be with that?
It's a very timely question, so we were discussing.
If we're going to go into a discussion on third-party administration, would it be possible to exempt the discussion, please? Thank you. Sorry for the interruption. We can now carry on. Sorry, I think we're just waiting for confirmation that streaming has stopped.
to note the progress against the business plan, task and action agreed budget. 2, the current measures on the strategic objective scorecard. 3, the risk register and the risk identified. And 4, the breaches register. And members note noted, Councillor Chapman, noted,
Yes.
noted the recommendation are set out.
No, you don't note it.
Yeah, noted. You
Okay,
are
noted.
Yeah. Thank you. So we move on to agenda item 12, Stewardship Code, timeline page 139 to 148. This report introduces a timeline for production of submission under the Financial Reporting Council's Stewardship Code. Rachel, could you please introduce the report, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies, bear with me 1 second while I wait for technology to catch up. No. Apologies. So the Stewardship Code timeline report is, as we're trying to present a proposed timeline for work on the Stewardship Code submission. As we know, this is something that particularly longer-standing members have been very keen to make sure that we do. The next window for new applicants to submit to make a stewardship code submission is I think in May 2024. So what we've tried to do in the timeline is to work backwards from that, looking at the proposed stages of work required. So looking first at a potential survey for the committee in July to capture some key beliefs. Then looking at involving the RI working group in the process. Developing an updated engagement framework, and then moving on to the actual drafting of the submission. I think Jill might be happy to talk a little bit about some of the additional work that's required.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. I think in terms of making an application for the stewardship code, Hackney Fund should be in a relatively good position in terms of certainly, you see on a regular basis the work that LAPF do. The Vice Chair, I believe, is still Vice Chair of LAPF as well. So, some good engagement there. And clearly you've done quite a lot of work to think about responsible investment and wider stewardship issues. So I think a good basis on which to start. I think there are a lot of additional requirements to actually achieve recognition under the Stewardship Code than perhaps historically there were. So actually trying to capture some of your investment beliefs around engagement and stewardship and wider responsible investment through a survey would be helpful to inform that. I think looking at a potential gap analysis of what you might need to do in terms of getting yourself as best prepared as you can to apply for the new stewardship code. It's fair to say that there are definitely funds out there that have made applications and not been successful. So we want to give you the best chance that there is of actually being successful in becoming full signatories. So we've worked with Rachel to set out a sort of fairly detailed programme of work, and very happy to sort of take questions on that. But as I say, hopefully we should be in a very good position, certainly by the time next sort of April, May comes, to be able to submit an application.
Councillor Chapman, I know you're waiting. So.
Thank you. Yeah, it's good. I'm glad it's a good plan. But what happened to the thing? I'm thinking particularly, didn't we set up a panel to start engagement some time ago? But I don't think it's ever met, has it? Or,
So it has.
but we're going to do all that as well.
Yes, so the RI working group has actually met to discuss in detail the carbon targets. It met it met, I think, in early spring this year. I think you did. Thank you. That's impressive. My sister's birthday. So yes, you met on the 8th of March. To discuss, and I think one of the things we'd like to do is to be able to make more use of that working group on the engagement side and be able to factor some of that into the stewardship code submission. So it is definitely an area where we would look to involve that group.
Yeah, thank you. That's helpful. It's great to have a plan. Of course, part of our plan, we're going to have to start doing stuff, aren't we? So, you know, you're good to get on with that.
Any questions or comments from members? Thank you for setting out the plans. So, the recommendation is for members to agree to know this report. So, can we know the report? Noted. Thank you. Any other business? No, I've not been. Oh, that's all right.
Just say, thank you for all the work everyone's put into the committee tonight, and there's an awful lot of stuff been done and some really solid things here. But I mean, it would be really helpful if we could have the papers just a little bit earlier and in the right order, because I think some we had like 36 hours ago or something, haven't we?
Agreed. That gives us time to read it.
That is.
And Chair, could I just ask, could mine be, I think I've asked this before, could I just have a hard copy sent to my home address, please, if possible?
Can you come on, please?
Could I have a hard copy sent to my home address? Because I much prefer working from hard copy rather than electronic, please.
And me, I usually get one, but I didn't get it on this occasion, so.
Okay, noted.
Same request, yeah.
All right, noted. Any other business? I've not been notified any other business. So we are moving to agenda item 14, which is, I think, is exempt as well. So we need to log off.